Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. Today we're going to talk about Jupiter ingressing into Cancer tropical zodiac for today because the ingression is going to happen in Gemini in the Babylonian sidereal zodiac, which I recommend paying attention to that as well for different reasons. Anyway, for the purposes of today, we'll stick to the tropical zodiac. There's some really interesting things going on with Jupiter on so many levels. First of all, Jupiter just entered Cancer recently, and it immediately formed the square to Saturn and Neptune. I have spoken about that in other videos, so you can hear all about that in those. I don't really want to repeat that, but I'm just bringing that up because it is important to keep that in mind, at least for the month of June and July, where Jupiter is at the very early degrees of Cancer and within proximity of forming the square to Saturn and Neptune, which is very important on a number of different levels. And if I was to summarize what I've kind of said in two previous videos, it would be to say that the Jupiter square Saturn is basically the desire to want to expand in one particular direction, and Saturn actually uh, putting the pressure on us, if you like, or maybe just feeling that we need to pull things in a bit. That Saturn always tries to, well, Saturn basically limits and restricts things. So the notion of expansion and restriction is the theme that comes up with Saturn square Jupiter, and with Jupiter square Neptune. That can be, I'm just summarizing what I've gone into in depth. The Jupiter square Neptune can be a very tricky aspect as well, because it can be the complete idealism projected onto something or someone and not seeing it for what it is, seeing the hopeful, optimistic Jupiter element, which it looks like a sure thing and it looks fantastic, but the Neptune is the one that can create the disillusionment, disappointment, and or deception. So just keep that in mind for the months of June and July regarding Jupiter. Now, what's going to happen with Jupiter is quite remarkable on a few different levels. First of all, it will be in Cancer for a year. That's how long it spends in one particular sign. So the last time Jupiter was in Cancer was 12 years ago. Okay, that's first point. Second point, where is Jupiter transiting in your own chart? Where is Cancer located in your birth chart? Um, is your own natal Jupiter in good shape? One thing to know with any transit, the shape of the planet that's transiting, right? That planet in your chart needs to be in pretty good shape for the transits of that same planet to really deliver. Now, Jupiter is a benefic. It's always going to be a benefic. So it'll always give. But if Jupiter, for example, is in its detrimental fall, something will be lost out of what Jupiter can really give, right? So just remember that. Now, Jupiter in Cancer is its exalted position. So that's another thing we've got in this story. So Jupiter is extremely powerful in Cancer. It's the exalted placement. Now, there is also an exalted degree, and the exalted degree for Jupiter in Cancer is 15 degrees. So when Jupiter gets to 15 degrees, that's going to be a really powerful portal time period. That's another thing to consider. Going back to the movement of Jupiter relative to your own natal chart, because I'm going to give some general descriptions, of this particular transit, but you always need to bring it back to your own chart, your life story, the context of your life story, and what's going on, and where is Jupiter transiting in your chart as well. Sorry for a minute. Also, is Jupiter going to form a favorable aspect to one of your planets, or to the north node of your moon, or to one of the angles of your chart? And if it does so, is it going to do it 3 times or just the one time? it's very typical for Jupiter to pass over, say you had the Sun in Cancer or Venus in Cancer or Mercury in Cancer or Mars in Cancer, etc., etc. It might be that Jupiter just passes over that planet once. It might be passes over it 3 times. This is something that you need to check. If you don't know how to do it, this is where I can come into the picture for you and help you with looking at this, right, and seeing what's going on. Because a 3-time passage of Jupiter, especially to the inner planets or the North Node or any of the angles, is quite favorable, particularly while Jupiter is in its exalted sign, which is Cancer. That's another thing to think about. Jupiter is going to, at the moment, let's backtrack. Jupiter at the moment is invisible in the sky. This is an area of astrology that's not spoken about by very many people at all. This is ancient astrology. This is what I've learned from Roman Kolev. And the value of it is just, it's mind-blowing, to be honest. Okay, I've often spoken about Venus relative to the morning star, evening star, when she's invisible and so forth. Those of you that follow me are pretty aware of that by now. Well, the same thing can happen to Jupiter, Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. So all the planets, okay? They are all in a particular heliacal phase at different times. So they will be a morning star, or they will be an evening star, or they will be invisible at some point. So at the moment, as we speak, Jupiter is invisible, and this is highly significant for what's happening, namely in LA, USA. Because Jupiter invisible basically means that the energy of Jupiter is not present. Okay, the energy of the help, Jupiter is the helper, he's the one who supports, helps, protects, puts order in as well. So Jupiter invisible means that Jupiter at the moment is dying. It's going through a death process. So it's not there accessible for the world to access the goodness of Jupiter. And when Jupiter is invisible, it corresponds to this chaotic kind of, well, not kind of, but quite an evil female goddess in terms of the Babylonian scriptures. Her name is let me just see, what's her name again? Tiamat. So that's spelled Tiamat. Now, Jupiter being invisible at the moment corresponds to the energy of this particular deity, who is a deity of chaos and disorder, destruction. And look at what's happening in LA. Now, there is chaos and disorder, clearly, and destruction and things like that. And we don't know exactly what's going to happen, the outcome of that, what will result. But I'm just bringing it up because it's so interesting to me that that is going on in LA at the moment while Jupiter is invisible. That's very, very important. Jupiter is going to become visible in the sky once it is reborn. Now, how does it have a rebirth? It forms a conjunction to the sun, which it will, what's the date of that? The 24th, 25th of June. So Jupiter's in Cancer, right? The sun will be in Cancer, and they will come together and form a Cazimi conjunction, which you'll hear a lot of people talking about. The Cazimi Sun Jupiter, it's Cazimi, blah, blah, blah. People will go on about that, but they probably won't talk about the significance of Jupiter. When it forms that Cazimi, it's going to be reborn as a morning star. And that rebirth of Jupiter as a morning star is what's called the helical rising of Jupiter, right? Which occurs on the 15th of July. So in other words, the Sun and Jupiter come together 24th, 25th of June, form the Cazimi conjunction, but Jupiter does not appear in the sky for most latitudes. I've looked at New York and I've looked at Melbourne. Okay, I haven't looked at every latitude on the globe, but if you live somewhere near New York or you live somewhere in the southern latitude near Melbourne, or that's a sort of similar sort of latitude to Melbourne, southern hemisphere, then this will be, accurate for you relative to Jupiter appearing on the 15th of July. So that's a really big deal in Babylonian astrology when a planet is going through a death process. That is, it's invisible in the sky. Then it catches up to the sun, forms a conjunction, which is referred to as the Cazimi, which is a rebirth. When the sun and a planet come together, something is fused, between those two energies. And the sun is the light, the life, it's Apollo, it's the light, the truth, life, source, energy, vitality. And it also represents new births. It's like a totally new, brand new cycle of the energy of Jupiter that's going to be reborn as a morning star, which its first appearance takes place on the 15th of July. These are really important details when you're looking at the transit of Jupiter, because most people are just going to look at, oh, Jupiter went into Cancer, a few days ago, a week ago, whatever it was. And they're not thinking about any of these other details, which are really crucial. So Jupiter's appearance in the sky is, I think that's when the the real sort of positive element of Jupiter's, that's when it will really start to pick up, when Jupiter is actually visible in the sky. Because before then, it's still going through a rebirth process. It's not ready to give what it has in its new cycle that it's bringing through. Now, what's really interesting with all of this relative to LA, of course, is also, let me just show you. So there are a few different charts for USA, but this is one that I primarily work with, um, which gives them 12 Sagittarius on the ascendant. So this is a national chart of USA. Now, look, they've got Jupiter in Cancer, right? So this is Jupiter in Cancer is their own Jupiter return. So it's bringing a lot of Jupiterian issues, which is relative to the person leading the country at the moment. There's chaos regarding migration and what's called illegal migration and so on and so forth. And so Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius, and Jupiter has got to do with traveling and culture and philosophy and beliefs and things like that. Now, the full moon that's happening today is right on the ascendant of the USA national chart. Okay, opposing all this stuff here on the descendant, Mars, which is aggression, Uranus, which is chaos. So here's the full moon triggering all this stuff, right, in the national chart of USA. And when Jupiter first appears in the sky, its heliacal rise, the degree that it's going to be at is 8 degrees of Cancer tropical zodiac, which places it at the midpoint of the Sun-Jupiter aspect conjunction in the USA national chart. So I think everything that's happening at the moment, some really big things are probably going to take place at around about the 15th, from the 15th of July and onwards. Okay. And then, as Jupiter proceeds forward, it's going to retrograde, and it retrogrades pretty close to the opposition to Pluto of the chart of America. So that's going to be a big deal. Jupiter retrogrades in November, the 12th of November, 2025, at 25 degrees of Cancer. So opposing Pluto, not exactly, but well within orb. And Jupiter goes right back to its exalted degree, 15 degrees of Cancer. So it goes right back to 15 degrees, and it stations direct on the 15th degree of Cancer, which is the exalted degree. These are all really positive things, by the way. Now, sometimes we need a bit of chaos to bring about a change. That's, just how things seem to unfold, in this third dimension reality, because of the nature of greed and ego and powers that just want more power and so forth, right? And want to minimize the power of the people. The only way they can do that is by exerting, their so-called will and power to restrict and limit, right? Humanity as much as possible to put everyone in the same bag, same basket, pay wise and everything else, so that they can stay up the top, right? So when there's a reform, a reset, and change needs to happen, it cannot come by people just sitting down and bowing down and saying, oh yes, take more from me, I'll give you more and I'll continue to be your slave. It doesn't work like that, right? So these are bursts of chaos that are triggered, through various norms and themes and prejudices and whatever it may be, are sometimes just the exact necessary thing in order for reform to take place, right? Because these systems, they just they're not really willing to give over any power. Okay, so that's just in summary what I'm saying with America at the moment. And I just thought it was very interesting from the point of view of what Jupiter is doing in the sky and what the full moon is doing right now, which is right on their ascendant. Okay, so I'll leave that there and you can explore that further yourself if you wish. Now, today's the 11th of June, which is the day of the full moon in Sagittarius. Of course, Sagittarius corresponds to, as I said, culture, ethnicity, travel. And what's the thing going on in LA all about? It's about, Trump seems to think that he's got the right to tell all these people to ship out. Now, once again, there are very divided views on it, and I'm not here to debate that. I'm just speaking to the astrology. That's all. So there's Jupiter at 0 Cancer. Okay. And let me see. As I said, Jupiter will be in Cancer for the next 12 months. And the next thing I want to show you is this chart. 25th of June, Southern Hemisphere. So it'll be 24th of June for you guys in the Northern Hemisphere. There's the Sun-Jupiter conjunction, which I was speaking about at the start. That's the Cazimi. It's a very important portal. And after that, the sun's going to continue to move because the sun is the faster moving body out of the two. Jupiter moves much slower. And so the sun's going to continue to move through Cancer, and then Jupiter will slowly move through Cancer. And by the time we get to the middle of July, the sun and Jupiter will be well and truly, far apart from each other. And that's when Jupiter will become visible in the sky after having gone a death, a transformation, and ultimately a rebirth. So a brand new beginning of Jupiter's cycle, and just so happens to be in tropical Cancer, which is very favorable for all of us, actually. So if things don't immediately pick up with Jupiter in Cancer, like you may have thought or maybe expecting, I would say, just be a little bit patient because Jupiter is going to be invisible until the 15th of July. Okay. Now, Jupiter in Cancer is, as I said, it's an exalted position for Jupiter. Jupiter is a benefic. When a planet is, in order to understand the cosmic state of a planet, we need to understand the matters of essential dignities and abilities, which is simply this: how does this planet operate in this sign? Because there's a system that grades, if you like, the planets in the zodiac. So certain planets have a lot of strength here, they might have a bit of weakness there, they might be neutral here, and so forth. That's why Jupiter in Cancer in this system is said to be its exalted place. So it's a very powerful Jupiter. It's got a lot to give. There's a lot of benefit that can come from Jupiter in Cancer transits. But like I said at the very beginning as well, you do need to look at where it is happening in your birth chart as well, because that's the field that it's going to speak to. And also, is your own natal Jupiter well placed? That's an important point that not many people even consider. So please consider that when you're thinking about Jupiter transits. Now, Cancer is a very subjective sign, a very personal sign, very insular, and it's all about personal security. In a nutshell, that's what Cancer is about. So when you bring Jupiter into Cancer, and particularly because it's the exalted position for Jupiter, it really enhances the themes that correspond to Cancer. Now, the shadow side of Cancer, and I mentioned one of these details in a previous video, and someone said, I've never heard anybody say that before. And it is true. That is that Cancer is an incredibly insecure sign. That's not a judgment. That's not a right or wrong. That's just the nature of Cancer. Cautious, very cautious, just like the crab walking sideways with his little house on his back, right? Extremely cautious, looking around, and it doesn't trust. It's very scared, it can feel threatened very, very easily. So the dark side of Cancer can be when one doesn't feel safe, then they will become um, you'll see a more aggressive side to Cancer, which people sometimes find themselves quite surprised, because people have this assumption that, oh, Cancer is just it's a water sign, it's all about caring and nurturing, it's all about protection. And yes, it is about all those things, but you threaten Cancer, and I'm telling you now, you'll see something very different to those qualities that I just named. One example that I love to use is Sylvester Stallone, who played Rocky, the iconic Rocky films. He's a Cancer, and here he is, this, very, very macho, masculine guy, right? Into fitness and sport and fighting and combat and competition and the like. And that's really a theme that's run through in his life, regardless of the Rocky movies. He's very much that kind of person in real life. But yet he's got this whole clan. He's got this family, this wife he's been with for years. He's got these daughters. His son, one of his first son that he had died when he was really, really young. That son of his actually played in one of the Rocky films, and he died after that. That was a big, big traumatic experience for Sylvester Stallone. Anyway, sidetracking slightly, but I'm just giving an example of how protective Cancer can be. In fact, I'll just read you this because I think this is really well. It's quite a good, succinct, more of a psychological explanation of Cancer, which is quite good. So this is Cancer, feeling a part of something. Now, these things are important because Jupiter is in Cancer, okay? The Sun is there as well, and Mercury is still in Cancer at this time, okay? This is the energy that's activated, but fortunately, Jupiter is a benefic, so it brings the best for these themes. It brings the best, it injects goodness and positivity and inspiration and confidence, and protection and all those good things that Jupiter brings, right? So Jupiter's going to bring its energy into Cancer in a very powerful, positive way. And these are some of the themes that connect to Cancer. A need to feel a part of something, emotional relationships, particularly to the past. Cancer's always about the past. Which is one reason why Cancer has this extraordinary, rich imagination, because they just tune into the ether, right, and draw from the past, images and memories and things of that nature. And it really inspires this extraordinary imagination from a creative perspective. Childhood, family, mother, community, or homeland. These are the key themes for Cancer. A need for emotional security, big need for emotional security. The biggest need for Cancer is emotional security. And that's the very thing that when that is lacking, that's when you see the flip side come through. Okay. An emotionally supportive environment is very necessary for the Cancer archetype, and nurturing personal relationships. If there's a sense of feeling satisfied in these needs, then you'll get the best out of Cancer. You'll get that real nurturing, caring, protective, not over the top smothering. You'll just get that beautiful, authentic, like the mother that everybody wants, let's say. The mother who really, really, really loves and nurtures for her child versus creating trauma in its life or abandoning it all and the like, right? Um, so, if satisfied, this need is transferred to others. So, if the Cancer energy is the archetype of Cancer is feeling that these things are in play, then within itself, then it transfers all that over to its environment and to those around it. Now, Jupiter's going to do this because Jupiter is a benefic, and this is Jupiter's exalted sign. So you'll notice that an area of your life or family matters and things will be greatly supported. Especially, you'll notice it, especially if you have a really difficult family background, if you've had some difficult family matters going on, you'll feel that things will pick up. Of course, there are exceptions because there's a lot of different things you need to look at when you're looking at what's happening over the next 12 to 18, 24 months for a person. It's not just Jupiter. That's one thing. But there's all these other things going on, right? That's why I say context, the individual, the soul's evolution, the soul's consciousness, all these things are going to be the defining elements as to how we experience what's happening in the sky, right? So people can really, really benefit with Jupiter in Cancer, like depending on where that's activated in our chart as well. And if we are in touch with that energy ourselves, we're feeling that we're feeling supported, emotionally supported, connected, protected, then we're naturally going to give that to those around us. Okay. It also contributes in vital ways to social cohesion. I'm reading from Rob Hand in case any of you ask. Social cohesion. So that's a pretty important element, especially given the chaos that's going on in various corners of the earth. Now, then he says, if this emotional need is not satisfied, if the archetype of Cancer is not satisfied, then the person can become fearful, grasping, and possessive in an infantile way. And I've seen that with Cancer archetypes. If you threaten a Cancer, that's the stuff that comes up. Smothering rather than nurturing others, substituting material possessions for the missing emotional support. An emotional, protective, nurturing influence overall is what Cancer is about. So we think about Cancer and all those sorts of needs and themes and the profound insecurity that can be activated or triggered in somebody, right? Depending on who you are and what your story is about and what's going on in your chart. Whatever it is that is going on and whoever you are, I guess what I'm saying with the Jupiter in Cancer, there's going to be some relief. There's going to be some help. There's going to be some support in some kind of way. Jupiter in Cancer will not bring up those shadow qualities that I just made reference to. Why? Because Jupiter is a benefic and Jupiter is exalted in the sign of Cancer. It really brings about the best attributes of Jupiter and of Cancer. So I think we can all agree that because of the way the world has been, particularly in the last 5 years, So many people have lost so much. And the most important thing, family members or friends or lovers. Forget about the material stuff. I mean, yeah, that's important. I'm not saying it's nothing. We need it to survive. But I think a soul is more important than your BMW parked in your driveway. So Jupiter in Cancer really enhances those those needs of feeling protected and cared for and nurtured for. And that might just be, for example, for one individual, that might simply be connecting with somebody. A friend of mine commented on my Facebook yesterday. She's got Jupiter coming to her North Node. And I said to her, that's great, that's wonderful, because the North Node is considered a benefic point as well, traditionally speaking, um, because well, it, it reflects a lot of different things depending on which lens you look through, of course, but there is a sort of unified agreement about the North Node speaking to our future direction, regardless of the lens that you look through, right? There are some variations and different things that come into what the North Node represents based on the teachings you're looking through. But overall, the North Node of the moon, it shows the integration of the soul's evolution, what it's trying to work towards, and the South Node corresponding to past lives. So Jupiter on your North Node, if that's you, that's going to be a pretty wonderful window, especially if Jupiter hits it 3 times. But even if it's just once, that could still be beneficial. It's not as strong as it would be if it hits it 3 times. A 3-time passage transit means that you have, well, in the case of Jupiter, you'll have Jupiter um, forming an aspect to one of your planets if it's a 3-time passage for about half of the duration of Jupiter being in Cancer, so about 6 months or something. And that's a lot better than just Jupiter passing over your sun and it's just there for a couple of days and then it's off, it's gone. Right? So, if you have Jupiter as a triple transit to a personal planet or an angle, this is a really, really, really beneficial time for you, depending on which planet it is and other things, of course, that might be going on. But Jupiter on the North Node can be connections to new people in your life that will end up being a wonderful support and guidance point to the future that you are trying to step into. Because the North Node is the future we're stepping into. It's what we're integrating towards. And the North Node can bring about the connections, people that just pop in, that we meet randomly, that just appear, that end up in one way or another, some way, shape, or form. They really support our path in integrating towards the North Node by presenting us with some type of opportunity. Now, that happens with the North Node when planets hit the North Node, right? That's sort of one layer of it. But obviously, the planet that hits the North Node is going to create a variation. But in this case, because it's Jupiter, Jupiter is about opportunity. It is about growth. It is about expansion. It is about protection. It is about helping us feel supported and confident to move in the direction we are going in, despite the chaos that's going on, right? Wherever it's going on. There's always going to be chaos going on the earth until we reach the golden age. Things change, but that's a long time away. So we're here right now in amongst the most extraordinary transitions of our lifetime. Pluto in Aquarius, Neptune in Aries, Neptune, Saturn conjunct at 0 Aries, February 2026. Uranus moving into Gemini, forming a trine to Uranus, then forming a sextile to the Neptune Saturn conjunction. These are extraordinary portals described by the nature of these cycles occurring with the planets that we have not witnessed in this lifetime. So circling back to Jupiter, as I said, for the month of June and July, Jupiter is squaring the Saturn-Neptune conjunctions. So if there's, be careful with over idealization on a sure thing. And don't fear and or feel disheartened or uninspired if you're unable to move as far as you need to with certain things, because the Jupiter Saturn does create a restriction, but that's only there for the next several weeks. And then after that, Jupiter forms a conjunction to the Sun, is reborn, complete new cycle, complete new energy in its exalted sign, right? Then we have its heliacal cycle beginning when Jupiter appears on the 15th of July. So Jupiter is visible as a morning star on the eastern horizon. That's a big deal. And then Jupiter goes retrograde in November and goes right back to its exalted degree. And that's where it stations and directs at the 15th degree of Cancer, which is the exalted degree. So there are some really great benefits for all of us that can come through with Jupiter in Cancer. And so I'll leave it there, because to run through the meaning of Jupiter conjunct or opposite or square or trine or sextile or quincunx or some other obscure aspects through every planet, I'd be sitting here for several days, literally. So clearly I'm not going to do that. Now, the other thing that I want to mention, actually, sorry, just before I go, because I've got a few followers that really understand the power of the asteroids, the goddesses. And so some people have Vesta in Cancer, for example. And so Jupiter's going to join Vesta for them. And again, I don't have time to run through all the asteroids, but I did make a statement to this person yesterday on Facebook. So perhaps I'll just repeat what I said. If you've got, Vesta in Cancer and Jupiter joins up with Vesta, this is Vesta right here, who's in Scorpio at the moment. She's a really complex divinity, but she corresponds to what we invest in at a pure, real focused zone, to the exclusion of everything else. The word investment comes from the word Vesta, the goddess Vesta. So, if you've got Jupiter coming to Vesta in Cancer, that can be some huge, because Jupiter rules huge. Anything that's big is Jupiter. That includes obese, overweight people. That's a Jupiter thing, believe it or not. So Jupiter Vesta could be some opportunity that comes up with some type of investment. Now, don't just think of money. People, instead of just saying investment, people think that them dollar signs just come up in their eyeballs, right? An investment can be anything. How you invest your heart with somebody, how you invest your time with somebody, how you invest your anything, just anything about yourself that you invest in something or someone is a valuable thing. Is it not a valuable thing? How you invest yourself in situations, relationships, and the like, and obviously the material world as well. Jupiter to Juno, I'll just run through a couple of them. Jupiter to Juno in Cancer, that would be a really tricky one, but it would be mostly good because of Jupiter's exaltation in Cancer. The reason I say tricky is because Jupiter and Juno, they're husband and wife in the Greek pantheon. They were husband and wife, and they fought like cat and dog because of Jupiter's playing around all the time. So when you see Jupiter, Juno together, the story of the archetypal mythological story of those two characters comes up quite strong. So it could be, I'll give you a simple example. Jupiter, Juno, you meet somebody and there's a connection straight away, and it feels like, oh my God, this could be the person, that this could be them, and then they end up being the exact opposite because they can't commit. They're not willing to commit. They're all over the place. They're jumping from here to there, and they've got maybe another five girlfriends on the side or five boyfriends on the side. That'll be a Jupiter Juno thing. But I think in Cancer, it might not be as bad. To use simple language. Jupiter to Pallas Athena, well, that is freaking brilliant. So you got Pallas Athena in Cancer, and Jupiter comes up to that point in your chart. Well, who's that? That's his daughter, the goddess of wisdom, right? So you've got the god of wisdom and the goddess of wisdom coming together in a conjunction. Imagine what can be born out of that beautiful little passage. And it could be a three-time transit as well. So it depends. Who have I left out? Let me think. Let me think. I'm just doing the main ones. So Juno, Vesta, Ceres. Okay, so if you've got Ceres in Cancer, yeah, that's hmm. Not a happy camper, that one. That's pretty difficult, because that asteroid, well, she corresponds to mourning and grief and loss. But again, we've got to think about what's coming up to support her. Say you've got Ceres in Cancer in your chart, Jupiter's coming up to conjunct her, that just might be a really important time for renewing some things in your family dynamics and feeling, just a lot more supported. In the process, whereas previously it might have just been impossible to reach somebody, to help them understand you, to feel your own emotional needs in the situation. Maybe they're just, too much into their own stuff and they can't hear or see or understand you or feel your needs. This is all about emotional needs, Cancer. And in short, Jupiter is going to bring some support in that realm, in those experiences for all of us in the best possible way. I'll leave it there. If you want to know more, um, because you want to know, what Jupiter is doing to your entire chart and or anything else, then just reach out and we can look at that and explore it and discuss it in the context of your life story. And it's, look, if you really value authenticity and you really value someone who knows their stuff, then choose an astrologer that's not going to print you out some fucking report, okay? Some generic bullshit report that's going to charge you 60, 100, 200, $300 or whatever it may be. That's my personal advice as an astrologer of 30 years in this lifetime. Don't go that route. It's not worth it. It's generic, it's commercial, it's BS, and it's just a money game. And I know some of the world's so-called top astrologers who do exactly that. And when I realized that, I was flabbergasted. I was, it took something away in terms of my respect for them. I thought, how could you do that? That's just my opinion. Perhaps because I can say that with such conviction and authenticity because of the way I work. When I work on your chart, I'll spend a couple of days minimum before we even meet up. I don't just sit there for an hour and that's it, or print something out and then just regurgitate it. I've never, ever, ever done that in 30 years. So if you're wanting something authentic, someone who really understands that it's not about just, oh, Jupiter's in Cancer and it's going to be great for you. Yeah, because Jupiter's great in Cancer. Or, something simple like that. If you want something more authentic and more deep, come to me, or choose someone who works in that way, but it might just be someone else that you prefer. That's fine, because everyone has their own preference with who they connect with energetically and otherwise. And I do too. I've turned back multiple readings because the energy just felt so off to me, and I couldn't connect. I couldn't envision myself pouring my heart and soul into this work over here for this person when I felt this really awkward vibration. I had to, like, I'm really authentic in that way. It's got to be real. It's got to be real, in my heart when I'm doing it. Okay. See you soon, and enjoy this Jupiter in Cancer. For the most part, I think it's going to be a much needed and welcomed sense of support from the great Zeus, Jupiter, who in Babylonian astrology is known as Marduk. Oh, one thing I just forgot to mention right at the start, or did I mention it? About the Babylonian Jupiter when he's invisible. Yeah, I did. Corresponds to this dark. Yes, I did. I did. Never mind that. Okay. See you soon.